Good afternoon, Mark here from Excel, and a red wine tasting on a pretty warm afternoon here on the banks of the Tay. Not really ideal for big, structured, slightly tannic reds, but that's what we've got. It's a Rioja. It's a Rioja that has scored 95 points in this year's 2021's Decanter World Wine Awards. Not a huge number of Riojas in the very top echelons this year. This is one of the few that does. Comes in at £21.95 we're selling it at, so not a ridiculous price for Riojas. And I'm going to explain it a bit because it comes under a slightly new and different classification system of Riojas. I think many customers, and I myself, have got very used to using the classic old structure, which is really an age statement structure, similar to Scotch whisky in a way, whereby we have Hoven, and then you have Crianza, and you have Reserva, and you have Gran Reserva above that. And that's really a statement of age, of how long it spends in oak barrels and how long it spends at the winery in bottle before it's released. People have got very used to using that as a quality statement, that to some extent a Gran Reserva is better than a Reserva, to some extent a Reserva is better than a Crianza, but it's not really a statement of quality. Not in perhaps the same way that we've got used to a statement of quality in Burgundy, which is much more land-based, Grand Cru, Premier Cru and so on. And I think that is probably a truer reflection of quality. Now, attempts are now being made in Rioja to move to a land-based system. I think it's going to be a long, long time before Crianza, Reserva, Gran Reserva are dropped away. But this uses the new classification system. Now, technically, it would be a Reserva because it's seen 18 months in oak, and you could have just put Reserva on the bottle. But the producers, Queiron, are using the new system. It's a Vino de Pueblo, which means it comes from one village. It has to come from a single family, I think, in a single village, and there have to be certain named villages from which Vino de Pueblo can come. The village in this case is Quel, in the main Rioja heartland, and so this is also known as a Vino de Quel. You'll see it as Vino de Pueblo, Quel, and Vino de Quel, just for extra confusion. But it's under that new structure. It's 2017, a warm year. It's 90% Tempranillo, 10% Garnacha. And, well, let's have a little sniff. Now, you can't get used to Reservas, to sort of really picking up big oak notes on the nose, combination of coconut from American oak, vanilla from French oak. And that is not super oaky at all. What is driving that is the fruit, that big Tempranillo hit, and the nose there is much more black fruits than red fruits. That is more bramble, it's more loganberry, that kind of thing, or tayberry, sort of very dark, deep red berries, but also black cherry, those kinds of deeper, blacker fruits as well. This is not a red fruit Rioja. This speaks of ripeness, it speaks of warmth, it speaks of that 2017. But it's not particularly oaky at all. As far as I know, this hasn't taken a lot of new oak. French and American oak both used on these, neither of them particularly new oak, and that you pick up on the nose. On the palate, good acidity, very good. Not searing, not particularly high, not sort of crackling Hoven or Crianza. That's been taken down and toned down by the oak over time. Not particularly oaky. Tannin's pretty soft. There's no furring, there's no real grippiness to that. Those are quite fine tannins, but there's enough tannin and enough acidity on that to say, actually, this has got 5 to 10 years ahead of it if you want. Would I drink it now? Yes, I'd probably go for food with it. I think it drinks okay on its own, but I think it will work better with food. Classic roast lamb, meat combos, those kinds of things. It is fruit driven. That is more fruit than oak, and sometimes when you get into wines of a similar age and similar statement, as in under the old Reserva statement, you would expect them to be quite oak driven, and on the palate that isn't. That's much more fruity, delivers much more in terms of fruit. There's a spiciness to it, almost like a sort of Syrah spice to it. It's definitely lively, it's definitely vibrant, by which I don't mean it's young and crackling in a kind of Crianza kind of way. It's definitely speaks of its age, of 4 years now, of the oak time that it's had. And yes, if you didn't otherwise know, you would guess that's a 4 or 5 year old Reserva type wine. It's better than that. I think it's made better than that. The way it's led by the fruit there speaks of a quality which I think you don't see with that many Reservas. I think it's great. I think it probably warrants its 95 points. Yes, I would definitely check it out, especially if you're curious about the new statement system in Rioja.